Um, Hello everyone, I'm Elizabeth Zavala and I'm going to talk about the Bauhaus. So to start with, the Bauhaus was a school of crafts, design, art and architecture, and his literally translation is house of construction. But it only took a few years for the Bauhaus to surpass the function of any educational institution and become not only the first design school of the 20th century, but also an entire artistic movement that became an international benchmark of architecture, art, and design. So now we have to go back to some aspects that were occurring during this time. And the first one was the end of the First World War. Uh, when revolutionary movements start to emerge and inspire to provoke a radical renewal of culture and society, with the need to find new paths of in terms of design and composition, right? So the main objective of the school at the time was to reform and unify the teaching of arts and to achieve a transformation of bourgeois society, to create a new aesthetic and to restore the artisanal character for the artistic disciplines. So the Bauhaus is divided in three main stages of development. The first one, which is the first phase, was when Walter Gropius was the director and its headquarters was in Weimar. The most important work developed during this time was the project of the Chicago Tribune of Gropius. Then we have the second phase, in which the school moves to the zoo, and in this stage is mainly characterized by the design of all aspects of the architectural environment, for example, furniture and accessories, and the insertion of architectural practice in the industrial processes. The most important work of the Bauhaus during this time was the building of the Bauhaus Dessau, um, and I'm going to explain this a little bit more later. Then we have the third phase and the final one. During this time, the Bauhaus was directed by Hans Meyer, who tried to link the technical and aesthetic problems of the construction with workers' organizations. Then Van der Rohe took charge of the school in Berlin, and during this time, the Nazis start to close some buildings, and the Bauhaus was one of them, right? During 1930. Now we have the characteristics. The Bauhaus, um, some of the principles established since its foundation was that the forms follows the function. That means that the different species and objects that were created during this time were based on geometrical shapes according to the function for which they were conceived, right? So in simple terms and in a very general way, um, the use of primary colors, simplification of forms, functionality, combined with modernity and basic materials, and also new conceptions of space, were some of the main characteristics of these schools. Now we have some objectives, and the first one is the recovery of craft production and methods. Then we have the raising craft power to the same level as fine arts. And finally, for affordability and marketing of products, because these products were designed in a way that people can buy them because of the period that was happening during this time, right? Which was the end of the First World War. Some of the representatives and the most important ones, because there were many, but I'm going to just talk about some of them in this slide. The first one was Miss van der Rohe, which was also one of the directors of this school. He was an architect, and his most outstanding work is the German pavilion for the Barcelona International Exhibition. Then we have Hans Meyer, He was a Swiss urban planner and also architect. He was also the second director of the school, and his most important work was the project for the Palace of the League of Nations. Then we have Marian Brand, which in my personal opinion, I think is very interesting because she was one of the first women to be admitted in this school. And he worked there as the director of the workshop of metals of the Bauhaus. Her teapot is one of the most important of his works, of her works, in this school. Then we have also Oskar Schlemmer. He was a German painter, a sculptor and designer, and he worked for a while in the mural sculpture workshop and then in the sculpture workshop in Weimar. His most famous work is the Triadic Ballet. And finally, we have Vasily Kandinsky and Marcel Brogoya. Kandinsky was a Russian painter, and he was in charge of directing the mural painting workshop and teaching abstract painting in drawing classes at the Bauhaus School. And then Marcel Brogoya, he was an architect and also an industrial designer. And as a professor of the Bauhaus, he conducted a series of experiments in furniture design. One of his most emblematic works was the design of the Vasily chair, which you will be able to see in a couple of minutes. Now, let's move to some of the most important projects of this school, and one of the most representatives also, which is the Bauhaus Dessau School in Dessau. So this project was designed by Walter Gropius and funded in 1925. This school is not only a classic of modern European architecture of this time, but it's also a symbol of rationalism and an icon of this famous school. So why they moved to Dessau? Well, due to the growing influence of the Nazis on Weimar, the Bauhaus in 1925 decided that, well, was forced actually to move to a new location in Dessau, which was an industrial center of 70,000 inhabitants. And, well, there were courses in architecture, photography, painting, graphic design, etc. So, in a very general way, this building has become the most emblematic of the movement. It has a large volume of an asymmetrical floor plan, horizontal windows, rollover design, absence of ornaments, and the presence of materials such as steel and concrete are very important. In addition to this, the concept of creating an interrelation between the interior and exterior space using the side windows stands out. About the composition, well, the building was designed according to the separate needs of the school, which are those that determine the shape of the building and result in a symmetrical figure. As you can see in this image, we have 5 main spaces, which are workshop block, auditorium and canteen, the Brother House Studios. The Brother House Studios was where the students actually lived, and the administration bridge and the technical college. Okay, so now about the materials and techniques. The structure is mainly it is made of a steel and concrete structure, which permits to ensure the unity of the complex and allowing for the existence of 3 different facades, which was built with very fragile materials such as glass. And the surfaces in between are mostly made of brick and also the floors. Above the materials, the movement enjoyed the possibilities of new industrial materials, such, for example, as I said before, reinforced concrete, rolled steel, and large-scale glass panels. The corridors and the stairs had magnesium floors, the offices had linoleum in different colors, and the walls were covered with lime plaster. Okay, about the objects and spaces. Well, I'm going to talk here also about a little of symbology, if I can see it in that way. So first we have the shape of the building, because if you see it from an aerial view, you will notice that the design allows to the shape of aircraft propellers, which were largely manufactured in the surrounding areas of the zoo. The building was designed according to the separate needs of the school, as I said before, which are those that will determine the shape of the building and result in an asymmetrical figure. Then we have the workshop wing that you can see here in this image. And this area has the form of a parallelepiped and consists of a functional and clear space allowing to the expansion of ideas and creativity for students. Then we have the orientation of the Bauhaus, which was the students' apartments, and it is eastward with the intention that the sun will wake them, well, the students, and remind them of their homeworks that they have to do during the day, and the beginning also of a new day. Then we have the Bauhaus furniture, which was designed according to the function, and here I put one example of it, which was the Marcel Breuer Vasily chair. It doesn't look very comfortable, but it actually is. And just to conclude and sum up, well, I think that the Bauhaus was a very important and innovative movement of that time, and it's a precedent of history, art, painting, and of course architecture. His legacy was a revolutionary movement for a hit of its time, and it has inspired many contemporary artists. Personally, I find very interesting the way in which they create like structures and furniture based on his functionality instead of just beauty. And most important is the part of that people could buy these products because they were having a bad time. It was the end of the war, so I think it was not easy to find like a new way to live and to build, like, to believe in themselves. So I think that the Bauhaus is a clear example of the diversity and its creators wanting to show that design and art can serve and be part of people to transform society. And that's all. Thank you very much.